that was my that's my problem. I don't know if it's interesting enough.
It's not interesting enough. We'll be the judge of that. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So on Saturday, I went to see this ballet performance.
What
All
ballet
right.
was it?
It was the work that I'm currently doing. They're a sponsor of this, of this ballet performance. So we got free tickets to go in. And yeah, we were watching the ballet, and then like after the intermission, a person in front of me, so it was a mother and a daughter. They started opening up like bags of chips and things like that, and started eating it in the ballet.
No, no.
Like you'd hear the
Crunch,
right,
the sound of the cellophane wrapper.
Did you give them marshmallows?
and see, right, the power of marshmallows. But like you'd also hear like, right, like the sound of like opening up a bottle. So I kind of bent over. I was getting kind of annoyed, so I bent over. I'm like, would you stop doing that?
Yeah.
Would you stop doing that? Please be quiet, right? And the look she gave me, right? Oh man.
Ooh.
So after that part of the ballet, the set or the little story finished, she turned around, looked at me, and said, "You made my daughter cry," right? And then she said, "You can go yourself," right?
Whoa! No way! Oh!
Oh my god.
Oh. Well, and did you, Chris? Did you?
Yeah. Oh my
Oh.
god.
So the
Because
rest of the performance, yeah, because I shushed her.
because you asked her nicely to stop eating potato chips at the ballet.
Yeah.
And she was like, "What the fuck?" That's crazy. It's like, well, maybe she just got so upset because she realized what she was doing was untoward. You called her out on it, and therefore it's like,
yeah, I think that's more along the lines, and I think she so after the whole ballet finished, right? Everyone's taking their bow, and the lights come up, and we knew it. I knew that she was gonna say something.
she's got more. She's got more. She's got more to say. Yeah.
She had more.
For fuck's sake.
She's like, she said, "You made my daughter cry. You ruined our entire evening." And then I look at the daughter, no tears at all, right?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Now she's just embarrassed. Yeah.
And that's what she said. She's like, it's like, "Mom, drop it. You're embarrassing me."
Yeah.
Oh my god. But you're awesome for saying something. You were amazing for saying something.
They shouldn't be eating their chips and their pop in what a ballet. Just infuriating, but yet a little comical, right? I found it a little funny that she felt so entitled, and despite being totally in the wrong, though.
Next time, bring marshmallows. Just hand her a pack and be like, "Shush."
That's not going to do anything.
Shush.
Yeah,
I don't know. It'd be pretty funny to see what happens.
That's my ballet story.
You always have to have some emergency marshmallows.
Yeah.
Yep.
Quiet, calming marshmallows.
What was the ballet?
Oh, it was a production of kind of like the Nutcracker, pretty much, but just modernized, really.
Reimagined.
So
Yeah.
you met a ball buster at the Nutcracker.
Oh, well done, well done.
Sorry. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
That's why they pay you the big bucks, man.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think that's as good of a segue, if anything, into our topic today, which is what's in a name. Yeah, Tchaikovsky didn't call it the ball buster.
How festive.
The Gonads Destroyer.
As
No,
this
that's
drops
a completely
in July,
different
right?
production.
What's in a name? Well, a lot, apparently. Yeah, the social, cultural, and like etymological backgrounds that come into just a word or a name of a city, of a character, all come into this. So how do we want to approach this discussion, guys?
Okay, here. I would like to first ask Jay, when you're creating your campaign, how do you come up with these names? What is your process for this?
Right.
Ouija board.
Ouija board. Yeah.
Just let the spirits decide.
Do you like open up like a boggle, shake it up, and then just like pull off the cap and just like make names out of that?
There's like 5 A's. What do I do with it?
Yeah. Not really. I sort of like I start from a I would like in the world that I have now, it's quite expansive. From there, I try to consider like how the cultures begin to sort of like bleed into each other as they move along, and then like this like the slight sort of linguistic shifts that might happen, like like a C turning into a K, or an extra vowel or a vowel shift or something like that, and just go from there, or start from a place of like, okay, I want this particular region to have kind of Russian feel to it, and then add like the Y's and L's in there and things like that. So that's usually just the starting point, and then you just like you tweak it enough. You start calibrating them enough to like, oh no, that's too Russian, and that's because therefore I don't want it to be Russia, but I want it to be I want it to be kind of evoking that sort of Eastern European kind of like perhaps the cold atmosphere or whatever.
Mm.
How about you?
Very similar to that. I have an insane process for names though. Like my process it's too much in some ways. Like I spend way too long making names, and when I make names, I go for lists of like 60 names. I try to make 60 names at a time.
Wow, that's
and
dedication.
then with that, I'll have maybe reserved like 20 for like main characters or like main like NPCs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll use the rest of them for like unknown NPCs, ones that I haven't developed yet. So say like they run into a shop and they meet someone and I need a name, I can pick it up from that list, right?
It's always the hardest.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's always the hardest thing to come up with a name on the fly when you need one. So it's good to have that list nearby that you could just have to like pull one out of in case they meet somebody and they need a name and like you're just stumbling to come up with one.
But also, I go even one step further in that none of the names can be close to each other. So I will analyze the start of the name and the end of the name, and none of them can be exactly the same, right? They can't sound at least any similar, unless if they're like twins or something like that. That's the only or triplets.
Because parents are cruel,
right? Like I know that's illogical. There are a lot of different versions of like names, variations of names, male and female and things like that, but I try to stay away from that so that it keeps it clear for the players that this is the one name. And often I'll even do it like alphabetically, meaning that there will only be maybe 3 A's, names that start with A's, and then 3 B's, right? Because then that way you won't confuse them too much if there's too many A's or too many B's in the even though like cultures tend to weigh certain letters more than others, but yeah.
Oh, this is smart. This is like writers have to do the same thing. If you bring a book to an editor that has like 4 names that begin with A, guess what's happening? That's going to sit right back to you and say, 1A, change the rest, right? So no, you're smart because that's going to keep that retention with your players, and they won't be like, so we have this guy and this guy and this guy. Who was the one that we met at the inn? Who was? You eliminate that. That's perfect.
And then I go even further that I have a huge list of all of the NPCs in my entire campaign, and none of them can be close enough to any other name of any other character or any other thing in the campaign. So it takes me forever to make names now. But there is kind of like a pride to it and a consistency to it that I really like. Now, as a writer, though, Sandra, I gotta know your process.
Well, if I'm imagining like making a character for a campaign, it tends to be a very auditory thing. Like you want it to sound cool, right? But when I'm writing, I need it to sound cool and look cool. If I'm going to be writing this name hundreds of times through the course of a book,
Yeah.
it's got to look good to me. And there's just certain letter combinations, certain when that's too close to the, so there's almost like a visual component of repetition you need to avoid as well, so that the name stands out. You want it to always be like when you see that name, you evoke the characteristics of that person, and you're off and running. So I hear your process of making sure they never like sound similar, look similar, things like that. And it's like, oh, it gets even deeper than that. So I completely understand your struggle. Because beyond an editor coming back and skewering you for it, you do get visually tired of seeing certain names over and over again. So for me, I tend to use names that are over 4 letters. That gets tiring to see 4 letters in a long sentence of bigger words. So 5, 6,
Oh.
7 tends to be a really good length, because then you get too long and it's just like trying to stumble over like strange fantasy names gets to be problematic for readers too. So so there's like an actual like name length I stick to, and that feels good, and you can stick with it long term over a series. So once I get past that, hopefully I have a collection of enough names to use for this project that work.
Yeah.
The things though, names can go like crazy, like real names can go crazy
Absolutely.
long, and
that could be part of the culture. I suppose if you do that though, you're not really expecting your characters to sort of like remember it for all that time. So they'd come up with a nickname for the character very quickly.
Yes.
Trying to avoid any potential names like a mother naming their children. You don't want the kid to be bullied. You don't want your new NPC to be bullied, so you don't want to come up with a name that could easily be kind of lampooned into something naughty sounding or something like that. But
so
and players don't mean
so-
to be disrespectful, but sometimes you just hear something and there's an innuendo in a name and it's done for, right? You just can't help it.
you don't see it, and or it's something. I can't say the name, but there was, I named my character.
oh, okay, there's Scrotor or whatever.
No, well, it's almost as bad actually, but there was something that I named one of my characters for someone's campaign, and turned out to have a very sexual reference, and I had no idea. I had no idea that.
Or anything, was it?
Come on! What was the character's
No,
name?
no. We can talk about this after, but it was just like it's something that I was unaware of, right?
Yeah.
And of course the DM knew about it, and he was just laughing and laughing. And you got to vet your names. That's the thing. That's the issue I want to get to. You got to vet your names.
Yeah, you make a good point about not having too many characters with the same letter. Like unless that becomes like a cultural thing where like it's a group of like mushroom folk who they all begin with a B. Every character's name starts with a B. Then it becomes
Breloom.
then it becomes something that's really memorable. Yeah.
Even the best names, we can only kind of work with maybe 2, 3 at a time for a bit, live in them, breathe with them. Like, so yeah, definitely give each name time to shine and be memorable before you throw the whole stable at them.
That's right. Well, and these are things that listeners should think about when they're making the names for their characters. Like does the culture have nicknames? Do they have middle names? Do they have epithets that connected to their names? Right.
Yep.
Do they have an honorific that goes on the front or on the back of their name, or you come up with a name that doesn't mean anything, in English or whatever language the game is being played in.
Mine hopefully mean anything anymore.
but then you make that word into that name into a word that means something in that culture. It's like a child's laundry, and it doesn't have.
And on that vein, if you do create any name, please Google it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I have had to change names before.
I have, I think, a limit where it's like 250. If it's lower than 250, it's usable. Like sometimes there are names and I'm like, oh, that name is a real name or it's too popular. I don't know if I can use that anymore. And I'm like, oh, it was a good name too, though.
Wow,
Congratulations, you people that were born with them.
you're super strict. Yeah, I don't go
Yeah.
that far. Like, there's a certain like you want a name to be memorable, and memorable names tend to be used. You know, there's certain
Yeah.
sounds that are pleasing. You know, depending on which culture that you're trying to, you know, like evoke. So
Mm.
yeah, you go farther than I do. That's for sure, Chris. That's amazing.
I will oftentimes start like I'll oftentimes have an idea of a first letter,
Hmm.
Mm.
and I'll just sort of I'll just start going from there and just start like sounding things out in my head with like the letter in mind. And then sometimes that will shift because like that starting point doesn't like kind of seed growth or anything like that. But then like usually it'll start from a letter or a sound and go from there. Whereas other times you'll start with I'll start with like a cultural aspect. So if it's
Yeah.
if a group of snake people, they're gonna have a very sibilant sounding name and with lots of S's. And we have a villain character who's like based on the deadly sin of sloth. And I was like, well, what would he be named? I was like like what's a name that requires like the most minimal effort? Like you don't even like So I was like, it's just like it's just like a sigh. That's the name. And yeah, and then like just the sounds of the letters can oftentimes, like your T's and your K's and things like that are
Right.
gonna have more sharp sounds, whereas like maybe your P's and your F's will allude to sort of more elvish sounding names and things like that, which strangely cultural. But like I guess if you wanted to completely flip that on its head, that's good too, because why follow convention, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I like to do is put boundaries. Put boundaries on, or put restrictions on the rules for naming. Right. So like there in this culture there are no V's, or in this culture,
Yes. Hmm.
you take away all J's or whatever, or not you Jay, but other J's.
You're
Yeah,
out. You're out of here. Get out of
I'm out.
here. You're not allowed here.
Or certain combinations of letters, like ZTH. That's a popular combination in these names. So I'll try to find like specific rules and try to, you can break them every here and there, because people move around, but for the most part I'll try to stick with a very hardy set of rules.
Creative restrictions.
Hmm.
Yeah. Question, Jay, you've had your campaign for a long time, and maybe back then, like I remember even my first sessions,
Since the
I was
90s. Yeah.
I was not
Oof.
the most creative with some of the names in the earlier building of my world. Are there some names that you regret using way back then that have now kind of like, put a veil of dour on your current campaign, and you're like, oh, I don't really like that name anymore for this ancient city that we had? Or are you it's part of the past, so you're just moving forward? Or
Oh, for sure. I'll often retcon that stuff. I'll change it just to like catch it up to, but the ones that I don't like are the ones that like from high school.
yeah, yeah. but do you keep any of those names, like like his name is Skeleton Master, right? Like,
That's
ugh.
boss. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'll try to like incorporate the original name somehow in it. Like maybe if it was like Skeleton Master or something like that. Like I'd come up with a new name,
Mm.
but it translates to like the Skeleton Master or something like that. So
Okay,
it's
yeah, okay.
so it'd still
It's still
be
there.
it still be in
Gotcha.
there. But yeah, a lot of the old names that were like just kind of taking cold cloth out of the Dragonlance books and stuff like that are still kind of hang around a little bit. They're partially an homage, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, should that change? Like my capital cities changed names like 4 times, I think.
But that's like
But
historic drift anyway, because you tend to
yeah.
advance your campaign through
Oh
like
yeah.
eras. So like yeah, names change all the time in our history. So why not there? And then some get forgotten. fortunately, intentionally. Skeleton Man Hollow is gone, strategically.
Kill your darlings. Yeah.
What about though the power of
Grayskull?
players? Well, the power of Grayskull,
Sorry.
the skeleton master,
You just had
right?
such a delay. It was like a prompting. Sorry, repeat the question.
The power of players.
Oh,
Players
they have none.
sometimes will create ridiculous names or names based off of things that that they really like and you'll allow. Where is the limit on that? Right?
Oh.
Like, because I've had an NPC, or I've had a PC named like Bowflex, right? Like Bowflex, and I allowed it. I allowed him. He's technically still in the campaign, like
Yeah.
but
In the end, you want your players to have as much fun as you do, and so it doesn't really you can't get hung up on that. And there's workarounds if you want to make it work, as like a published thing. I remember one of my players, this is years ago, had a character name called Edward Newgate.
Oh,
I knew
yeah.
you were going there. I knew you were going there.
And so so I'm teaching one of my university classes, and I'm just like talking about like what's your favorite like character, like fictional character. And this kid goes Edward Newgate, and I'm like, wait, what?
Whoa!
And it blew my. I was like, I had this weird moment, like, how the hell do you know that name? And that's when I realized, wait a minute. And I Googled it, and I was like, oh, it's a character from One Piece. I was like, you son of a bitch. Anyway, like I still have a city called Newgate in there because of that, but it just works. I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
like it's generic enough that it's okay. But yeah, that was like on the edge,
If it's like makes you feel any better, I literally played a character from Newgate, and I didn't even connect it to One Piece at all.
No.
So it never even jived to me. So until
I
you
don't
told
know.
that story.
I probably would have been like Newgate. I know that. I'm a huge One Piece fan though, so yeah. I'm crazy. I'm crazy about
I mean,
that.
it fit, but that's the thing. It fit the continent where it was on. Like that name seems completely normal for that continent. So it was like, yeah, okay, cool. I wonder how that name came about. Like,
it's like in England or whatever. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it works out. Yeah. Well, on that note, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk more about names.
So I feel like we hit on a lot of for character names. A lot of ideas to mix it up, how to diversify, how to not fall into the trap of your beloved character name turning into a joke. But I feel like we did a little less on places. So for anybody who might be out there making a campaign, a one-off, or even backstory for a character, and they want to make their society, their homeland, be a bit more integral to the character that they're playing. What kind of ideas, Chris, do you have for making truly memorable and unique geography in your campaigns?
So that big list of names that I make that I spend so much time on, right? I take the best names and take those and use those for places as well. That's basically what I do. So like I will just keep on generating as many names as I can, and make sure that they all sound different, they all fit differently, and then what I'll do is I'll take the best names for the main cities. I'll take small, okay names for kind of like the outer cities, less important places, if they run into them, and then like all the really great names for villains, main NPCs, and things like that. And that's usually how I do that. So I just mine is more just like a lot of content and then just dispersing them where I need them, pretty much. That's my method.
Now, a follow-up to that is, do you find a need to give like a certain like purpose to these names, like especially for your like capital cities, or Do you just like, does it ever really come up for your table that people ask like, oh, well, this is a really interesting name. What's the origin of it?
I usually have a made up reason for the names though. Like it's kind of like I'll sometimes work that way, but most times I'll work backwards where I'll have the name and then I'll make the meaning for the names based on the language of the region.
Hmm.
Because like you can make up anything. You can say that it means like rosada. Rosada is the one that I was working on. It means like rose larch, pretty much, right? A rose larch tree, right? So it's kind of like I'll make the name and then I will make the meaning behind the name after. So
It sounds like a
because
lot of world building
anything
can come
anything
out of
goes.
that
Oh
as
yeah,
you run down those threads.
and then sometimes you can reuse some of the starts and endings of those names and then add them to other things so that they has that consistency of the language.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's some really
yeah,
good tips.
that's usually what I do. How about yourself?
Uh, I have a weird like proportion that I like to do. So, uh, if there is like a religious part to a
Mm,
society that I'm writing, religion's going to play an outsourced impact on naming these locations, especially near their temples, near their holy places, right? But as soon as you start getting farther away, I start imagining what these outlying societies are doing. Are they supporting the religious majority? Are they uh at odds with them? So on and so forth. So for me it's more about what is the purpose of the landmass that I'm working with. Like if you're
mm,
on the coast, you're probably dealing with a more merchant
yep,
trade
yep.
related. So the names are going to reflect that. And then as you come inward, you see where the power structures start and end. The names are really going to reflect that.
Mm,
Um, and not to leave out even things like famous battles. So if you have two opposing, like at odds societies really close, there's probably going to be battle names between those borders. Um, or even like cautionary places, like if there's like a geography feature that is dangerous. People just kind of go like, oh, okay, well, that's like Slaughter Gulch or something like that. And it's just almost like
mm.
a cautionary. So for me, it's what is the land being used for by the society? And then the names kind of go from there outward.
Yeah, you've got your geographical
Yeah.
locations that can contribute to it. Is it near a swamp? Is it near a mountain? Is it near a desert? They can
Hmm.
incorporate that some into
Mm,
the naming conventions, and then there you go. You've got a lexical item for what
that's good.
swamp is in that language, or
Yep. Yep.
mountain is in that language, and all that kind of stuff, which then could become like related to the names of gods. And I mean, like think of the Abrahamic religions and stuff like that, and how you know between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, how the names are so vastly different and yet all sort of related to a similar core tenet. Arguably. Uh, but you've got this sort of like this spread of names that are from like the religious texts as well. So that's another way in, right? Is it a very religious society? And then what are the stories within that religion that you can build names off?
And don't forget history. Like we have a lot of place names in
Yep.
in our three countries that can go back hundreds of years, right? And somehow that lasted, like somehow that pulled forward, and you start wondering where did this name even come from because it's not relevant to your society.
Mm.
That creates a whole like bunch of intrigue that you can run your players down. Of course, one thing that I was thinking about when we were discussing this topic was the cautionary signs that we have for like nuclear waste sites, where we're thinking about civilizations in the future are going to understand this is a bad place through like graphics, right? Through pictures. And
Mm.
what would those future generations call this place in their own language now? Because they don't know what we called it and they can't even read our language, but they know it's bad, right? So like, and these are just ways to play with time, right? So how far back do you want to go to define your location for your future generations? So lots of ways, lots of
Uh,
little levers to pull.
And I think that GMs shouldn't necessarily have all of their ideas uh, ready at the moment. Like, so maybe you throw up a
Sure.
few names that like have that
Mhm. Yeah,
suggest
absolutely.
yep.
meaning, and then in the moment it comes up, and then based on the play, like a lot of these villages, you've got some ideas of what they're going to be like, but then once they become like these lived-in, played-in spaces, they kind of change and adapt a little bit. And at that moment, you can then figure out what this word means, or you know.
That's fun. Even your players can help define it if they're from that location.
That's right.
Helping like crowdsource your lore a little bit to make it even more immersive.
Hey, it makes it a lot easier and also a lot more immersive if you let them also craft part of your world.
Yeah, it's so meaningful to that like long-term satisfaction of playing in a world. I think the worst games I've ever been in were like the tight-fisted DM who's like, I tell you everything, right? So those experiences don't tend to last. And there's a reason. Everybody wants to be a part of it. Now, of course, you know, if you have a player who wants to start naming it really off the wall things, yeah, tactfully rein that in because it's going to affect the whole table, I think.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to know both of you to answer this question. Is there any like naming conventions that are just wild that you want to find an opportunity to use? Like just some like reimagining of how a culture would name their people that you haven't yet found a place for yet.
Ooh.
And I can give a couple of examples to see if it sparks anything. Like one thing that I personally want to do sometime in writing is that at certain milestones of a person's life, they're given an additional name, and it tells the story over time. Kind of like how people will get tattoos on certain birthdays that show their life history going forward. I want to see a name that goes like 9 words long for this like real like ancient elder. And you just can tell the course of their life from this name. So that's something that has always just been bumping around my brain, and I need to find a purpose for it.
Like Hawaiian culture, Polynesian.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose the first thing that came to mind is like the Khoisan, like kind of clicking language of Africa,
Yes.
or some like that's hard for everyone to do. I couldn't do it myself, but like the like perhaps some strange linguistic feature that is related to the excuse me. That's related
a
to
linguistic
the culture.
feature.
There we go. Yeah, the coughing culture.
The closest thing that I've gotten to that was they went to this other dimension where there was these like animate rocks, and they don't speak a language, they speak vibrations. So all of their names were like brr, 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 and like that was how they spoke, right? Because they only speak through vibrations. They don't actually have physical mouths, right?
Oh, that's so much fun.
So it was almost like like braille marks or kind of like what's that beep 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 beep
Morse code.
Yeah,
Morse code.
Yeah.
It was more like Morse code where it's like vibrations were their names pretty much. That's the closest thing I have to that though.
Oh, that's so neat. I could even imagine like I know Jay's gonna know, but when you see like a graphing of sound, why is that word eluding me? But yeah, like if you're doing audio engineering and you see the mapping of a
Like
sound wave.
the
There we go, sound wave.
Sound waves.
Yeah, thank you. Like that's their name.
Yeah, right. And then
That'd
it's
be
just
so
like
cool.
it's just like recognizing that pattern instead of their actual name anymore. So yeah, that's the closest thing I have.
That's really fun. That's really abstract.
They speak like giraffes or whatever on like a supersonic or subsonic level or something like that. So you can't quite make it up.
Good luck ever calling them the right name.
Yeah. They speak in whale song, Ooh, it's so relaxing.
Oh, you've just insulted them. Roll for initiative.
Oh no, yeah, you didn't go. You went like 1 second too short. Yeah, you got to make it longer. The length is
insulted its mother.
Are there any standout names or places names, character names or place names that, for whatever reason, you're drawn back to, or like, oh, I like that one?
Oh,
From
man,
characters that you've created or places that you've created.
one of my favorite places. It's named Del Winneth.
Okay.
It just has a kind of like a beautiful flowing name to it, like Del Winneth, right? Oh man, I could just go on.
I'd
There are too
vacation
many
there.
names.
I totally would vacation
Yeah,
there.
right, right.
Yeah,
Except it's
yeah.
terrible though. That place is horrible, full of golems.
No, that's deceptive. That's not all right. Um, I think I still quite like my bard's name, which I thought was like maybe a little too obvious at the time. Her name was Liren. Yeah. But it was just
That's
such
good.
a beautiful name for somebody whose like whole purpose in life was to produce music, right? So
Mm,
it was like it seemed to make sense based on her family, based on where she were born and raised, very artistic, poetic kind of society. But of course you'd name your daughter something beautiful, right? And yeah, I think of all my characters, that one really still like feels nice to me. It's like I haven't gotten tired of seeing that name. So
Jay, you gotta have some names. Go.
Um, s- our campaigns recently brought us to a place of real creepy mask wearing
oh,
fellows.
that is a great name.
They're called the Zora High,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Dzorahai, and I kind of quite like that. It's kind of a unique, uh, sort of non. It doesn't quite fit within like a Earth equivalent, like wherever they be from originally or something like that. So it puts them kind of in a unique, otherworldly area, which is I like.
Mm.
That one kind of jumps out at me. We had a dragon called Araxis, which was kind of nice too.
Mhm.
It has a
Um,
very a very very powerful sounding name.
very dragony sound
Yep.
to it. Yeah, yeah.
I quite like the Shin as well, which is like is a place in the old continents that's like a fortress. And it's like such a strange name, like, oh, that's got to be like historic drift. That's got to be something. But it was like literally in reference to the body part, the shin. And it was like,
Mm.
wait, what? And then I was even more like it's like I needed to know. I needed to know why it was called that now. Like so you went from one wanting to understand the mythology to even going deeper into wanting to understand the mythology. And then when you finally like find out, it's like that's fucking cool, right? So yeah, yeah, I think that one really stands out to me. Because it was very, like, out of place for the continent too. It was like, that one, just same with the fortress being there, it was also kind of, like, out of place. So, very interesting.
That one has some old high school references to it in a way. Like, so I think I had seen Kubrick's film The Shining, and so I just called it Shining.
Oh!
Oh. Oh.
um,
Interesting,
and
I
I was like,
forgot that.
I was like, no, I don't really like this. That's weird. Uh, and so then it turned into like Shinning. I added an extra N. And then that still didn't work, and so that whole N just got cut off, and then it just became the Shin, and then that just changed into like where it is now. Yeah, so
Huh.
that's a typical, like going back to what we were saying before about adapting
Mhm.
names as things move forward. Yeah.
Oh wow.
All right. Well, as we move on, our third very brief topic to close out the episode was just giving suggestions to any fiction or nonfiction, non-fantasy books that people might be able to read in order to give them inspiration for their own campaigns, if there are any that you can come up with.
Take it away. I don't read anything non-fantasy, so
Uh, honestly, um like, drawing a blank on the author. I'm so terrible with names, but I will have that. The author of 1453. Let me pull it up right now. Look. Roger Crowley. Um, he's a historian who, oh, like if you want to read just an in-depth history of hopefully he covers a region that you're currently trying to be inspired by. Obviously, 1453 is like the fall of Constantinople. So this is such a riveting format that it to me it reads like the best fiction book.
Mm.
When I digest one of his books, I don't put it down. It is gone and over with like that. Um, so if you wanted to delve into history, be inspired by the regions that he covers. Yeah, you're gonna feel like you're in it. Like other than literally traveling to a location where I know the history, this has been the second best thing past history classes that I've had great professors with. Um, all that.
Oh.
I would highly recommend his books.
For historical books, The Waning of the Middle Ages, also known as The Autumn of the Middle Ages by Huizinga, is a really interesting book. It's sort of a kind of academic look at what life was like during medieval France. That is like a gold mine for like references for any medieval setting that kind of pulls in ideas from the medieval era. I mean, there's so many of them, right?
Mhm.
There's also a book called The History of Reading, which is excellent. It's full of all these sort of anecdotal stories about, reading from different areas of history. The whole idea of how, cigars in South America are called, Monte Cristos and stuff like that. Why is that so? Because while people were rolling up the cigars, the person who would sit at the front of the room would just oftentimes just read a book to them, and whatever the book they're reading, that's what they
Aw.
name the cigars and stuff like that. So all these interesting little ideas, and then a third one is Under the Black Flag by
Mm.
David Cordingly, The Romance and the Reality of Life Among the Pirates. Fascinating book, very quick read, and it gives you all these great stories about how life aboard a pirate ship would have had, like, the guy who had the peg leg and the the one eye and the hooked hand. He would have been probably the richest guy on the ship, because they'd often get higher salary pay scale based on those who were like injured in battle or on board the ship. So they would actually kind of democratize it a little bit, or
Oh.
socialize it, I suppose. So that's always interesting. It's like, oh, that guy's well off, and all these other great stories. As for fiction, I mean, I would just direct anyone to the classics. Anything by Dostoevsky, anything by Steinbeck, East of Eden, all these kind of things. The Pearl, all these stories have just great stories within them that you can pull out. And the Man of La Mancha, the Don Quixote. I mean, holy cow! It's one of the best books ever written, and it's probably like the first modern book ever written. I mean, it's actually got fantasy elements to it in a sense. Though it wouldn't be called a fantasy, more of a romance in the kind of classical sense. But so yeah, those are my picks.
Yeah, they endured for a reason, right? Also tossing in there The Wager, if you have not read that by David Gran. That is another just riveting, because it's based on historic details, but he fills in a lot of it with interpretation and stuff. So kind of fiction, but the best that they could figure out. That is a truly riveting book. And how many times do we have campaigns where you're on a ship? So
It's pretty
bone up on
important.
some of that immersion, right?
Yeah.
Airship or otherwise. What do animals say in your fictional language? Koki
Depends.
koko. Okay.
Oh, we
Depends.
don't allow familiars. No, we do. I'm lying. I'm totally lying.
Merc and
All my oh,
all right, guys, excellent. So I think that will be it for today's talk. I'll see you all next week.
no.
Have a good week.
Ciao. Meow meow.